In this episode, we light up the lights. We take a look at Dave's CB&Q operating railroad, a modeler's meet where there's exceptional detail to be found, as well as Ken's S-scale railroad.
Don't look at the ultraviolet light,
But it is helpful, and we meet up with an old friend. And Colin Bohannon answers a viewer's question of the week. And we cover all this on this episode of the GN in 1970.
70s.
Here we have that GP35 that never seems to really get finished, but I'm addressing the bug-eyed headlights. This is something I find common in Athearn locomotives, these RTRs. They're incandescent bulbs that need to get stripped out. So I just grab a pliers and I actually pull them out. We strip them out completely because we're going to put in LEDs. We hit the board, you toss it.
boy, he tosses a lot.
Now, the board itself, this is the Decoder Buddy. As I mentioned before, it has a harness that you can place onto the Decoder Buddy motherboard. This is a nice system to use just because you then have the ability to detach the headlights if you're going to remove the shell for any reason. It just makes it quick and simple. They do have the diagram that you're going to want to use for reference to make sure you wire everything up in the right places. As you can see, there's a lot of contact pads that you're able to solder up because, well, those 21-pin decoders have a lot of different functions. And I'm not going to bore you with the full install as a step-by-step type process because I think the instructions are fairly straightforward and easy to follow. So we're just going to get the leads soldered up. All right, you can see we've got all our wires soldered on, and it is really a fairly straightforward process. You're able to just basically get your front headlight, your rear headlight. I've got a beacon involved as well as a few other accessory lights, which we're going to take a look at here a little bit more in depth later in this episode. It's time to test a little NP knowledge. The North Coast Limited was the first passenger train to run from the heartland of the Midwest to the Pacific Northwest. The maiden voyage took 62 hours and 30 minutes to run from St. Paul to Seattle.
Oh, that's a long time.
At first a summer train only, it became a year-round train just 2 years later. What year did the North Coast Limited debut? Was it A, 1900, B, 1902, C, 1911, or D, 1947? We'll find out later in this episode. You might be asking the same question Kevin is thinking, and that is, what are you looking at? What we're looking at here is Dave's CB&Q Railroad we had the opportunity to run operations on. We're going to give a little brief overview of the railroad. I didn't have the opportunity to explore the entire layout as I had drawn the Milwaukee Road job.
Surprise, surprise.
We're back in the corner here just taking a look. It's kind of a cool little system Dave's got going on. The Milwaukee Road is a separate independent railroad from the CB&Q.
That seems pretty obvious.
But Dave has set it up in such a way that these tracks here become kind of the interchange tracks, or you'll run a transfer into the CB&Q. Now here's where we spent a lot of time, and that was actually just switching these industries back here, but we might as well take a look at these guys cruising by. We'll swing over and take a peek at the switching area that I was working within, and it was a lot of fun. Dave's got this very well planned out. I'm not so sure these guys got things so planned out. Looks like they ran into a dead end.
Yeah, boy, I can't believe he just said that. These jokes are atrocious.
So's your face.
And while we didn't have a whole lot of time to take a look at the entire railroad, we're going to be heading over to a modeler's meet. And before doing so, I figured I'd take at least a general overview. We'll let you guys enjoy just a few angles and shots. I do have to apologize for not covering the railroad in more detail and not even getting a photo with Dave in it.
Sorry about that, Dave.
These are great operators, and it's a great community to get to know these guys, as well as this guy who's a former BNSF engineer. Kevin, we look forward to seeing you at future ops as well as flea markets and answer that question.
What are you looking at?
Now, it's fun to get to know fellow modelers at an op session, but it's also even more entertaining to meet them in person at a modelers meet. This has been put on by Ken Ziska here in the Twin Cities. It is a fun way to be able to get to know some fellow modelers and see some cool modeling. Like this model of ELS 501 done by Owen. This kid is under 18 years old and knocking it out of the park. The detail here, custom built horn, and listen to the sounds of 500. We're going to pause it here to be able to tell you that that's an ESU Loc Sound decoder that Owen went through the trouble of downloading the sounds from the actual ELS 500. How cool is that? I mean, you're talking about taking the prototype right to the model. And speaking of models, Owen's dad, Luke, one of my favorite Sioux Line modelers that's out there because he goes after the prototype. Here's a few examples of some of the work Luke has done. There's the art train in the background, this F unit that he said was an Atlas unit that he went through all this extra work to make the thing look exceptional. As I can't cover all the details that Luke puts into so much of his work because there's so darn much of it. You want to take a look at Luke Sue's second sub. You can find him on YouTube or you can find him on Facebook. Just type in Sue's second sub and you ought to find and enjoy the modeling that he's done. And we can't get enough Sue as we pop over to the godfather of Sioux Line modeling. That would be Mr. Bob Rivard. The detail that this guy puts into his models is what inspires all of us. And it's not just Bob that dives into the details. Here we're looking at Tom Gazer as a master model railroader, and he goes into a lot of detail. The beautiful thing about going to events like this is to be able to talk to these fellow modelers who are extremely kind, generous, and open with sharing the ideas that they have. And you can obviously share the ideas that you might have as well. It's all about the community. It's all about the communication. And when it really comes down to it, it's all about having fun with it. How cool is this? We'll just take a look at a few of Tom's pieces.
I thought this was a family show.
As we take a look at Tom's coil load here, it's definitely cool to see the process that he's taken as well as ask him questions if you attend an event like this. That's the one nice thing I like about this has been the opportunity to learn from fellow modelers, whether it's through the clinics, talking to them firsthand, learning about different things like T-Track or ATCS. What's ATCS? Well, I think a lot of people already know what this is, but Ted has been working on this program here in the Twin Cities that allows us to be able to monitor and take a look at where trains are moving in the prototype world. And after the prototype meet wrapped up, Ken Zisco was kind enough to open up his railroad. If you haven't seen Ken's railroad, you can check it out on YouTube. He gives a full tour, but we'll just give you kind of a glimpse as to what he's up to. At the moment here, he's being helped out by Bill Brillinger from PDC.ca. He's helping out with Rail Pro to be able to show how to use drive hold or the throttle effect. We're looking at a lot of different details that Ken has to offer. There is so much to look at in a railroad of this size. As I mentioned before, it is in S-scale. My dad is the giant monster in the background. We do look at the details. So many of the things in S-scale might need to be customized or scratch built, but that's one of the cool things. If you're interested in scratch building or the customization of things, this might be the perfect scale for you. The element to be able to dive into all the different details, that is what is fun about the hobby. So it's find your niche, and as you can see, Ken has definitely found his. I do have to give a big thanks to Ken, the presenters, and all of those who attended the Modelers Meet. It makes for a fun and entertaining time. Thanks for helping build the community.
I wasn't sure how to tell you this, but this is an operator's update. If you've got bad breath, have a Tic Tac, have some gum. I mean, if somebody says, hey, you got a match? Yeah, they'll say, yeah, your face and my butt. Ooh. Next time you're in an operating session, make sure you just get rid of the coffee breath or whatever it is that you smell because they're not going to be listening to you. They're going to be passing out. Watch it!
All right, here's the way I replace an incandescent bulb. It's the use of fiber optic lens, and that will simply take two LEDs. I set them aside for the front and rear. I nip off a little piece of the fiber optic, use a lighter, and I melt the end of the fiber optic. As you can see here, you don't want to hold it on there too long, enough until it just becomes a nice looking lens.
That's the stuff.
There you go. That's a lens. That's easy. Very doable. And I'll end up being able to slide the LED on the back side, but before I do, I will slide it through the front side to be able to make sure the lens fits in nicely, as it does here. I end up using a little bit of glue to be able to hold it in place, but you get the gist.
What's the gist? I thought we were talking about light bulbs.
We are. Yours just isn't on.
Burn. Oh, another light bulb joke.
As we take a look at number 728 that graced the cover of the Sioux magazine, we end up adding a few details, but we'll take a closer look at the way those lenses turned out.
It's a beaut. It's a beaut, Clark.
And we're back to the Decoder Buddy, but not talking about the Decoder Buddy itself, but something else NixTrainz offers, and that's actually ground lights. These things are wicked small. How small? Well, there's a dime for scale. You can see the detail on these things are insane. I'm going to install these on a future locomotive because I end up using this Bondic prior to actually getting the NixTrainz ground lights. What I've got here with the Bondic is it's that dental material that hardens, and, well, as you can see here, I end up creating my own ground lights.
And how did you go about doing that?
Well, I end up using just a little bit of the Bondic, and you use an ultraviolet light to cure the material. I just fill the void of the Y of the wires, and, well, as you can see, that is developing and creating my ground light effect. As you can see, there's more to it than that. I'm using flat black by Model Masters. It's an acrylic paint, a small brush, and then of course the light as it has been applied. I end up just brushing it on. Alright, it's that time to find out the answer to the NP question. Did you sift through your logs, your blogs, or all the information you have stored and came up with the right answer? If you guessed A, 1900, you'd be correct. It was in 1902 the North Coast Limited started the year-round schedule. In 1911, the Eastern Terminus was extended to Chicago. And in 1947, that was the year it received the lightweight, streamlined equipment that we all know so well.
How does he think we know all the answers to all these questions? I just guess.
Well, for Muddy Waters, this is a sight for sore eyes. 2821 just happened to be former Great Northern 3005, one of only two to be painted into big sky blue. Speaking of blue, we did run across M&S number 2039, which is an all-door. It's kind of cool to see some of the old relics that are still around. And speaking of relics, we might as well see this guy in action. I ended up following 2821 out to Tate and Lyle, where they took a idler car as well as a shoving platform and end up swapping out some tanks. It's always cool to see old relics rolling the rails. This locomotive was built in April of 1963. Who says you can't look good when you get old?
My wife.
I tell you right now, it's cool to see old 2821 on the rails, and we're going to take a look at her shoving back and close this out. You done shoot about as good as you model.
Alright, Cullen's question of the week. You running sound? You leaving your bell on the whole time? You honking your horn at every crossing, or you just honking at every passing by in the aisleway? Tell you right now, you don't need to leave the bell on the whole time. You ask an engineer. They don't like listening to that ding, dang, dang, dang in their ear the whole time. Shut it off. That's Cullen's take.
Hopefully you enjoyed this most recent episode of the GN in 1970, and even if you didn't, you can pop over to the channel and take a look and see if there's a video there you might like. There's the GN in 1970, the virtual tour of the GN in 1970, as well as Sue the Milwaukee Road. I want to give a huge thanks to those that have hit the like button, hit subscribe, as well as commented on various videos. It means a lot to me because we've actually connected as modelers and be able to learn different tips from one another, as well as learn about other channels and guys that are sharing content. I don't make these videos for me, I make these videos for you, so hopefully you're enjoying them and you enjoy the future episodes of the GN in 1970.
70s.